Massachusetts Breast Cancer Coalition. Cheryl, I'm just going to try to pass you this. It's just a sure, if you don't mind. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it on the other side.
Good morning. Thank you to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection for hosting this hearing and opportunity to comment. I am here today on behalf of Massachusetts Breast Cancer Coalition supporters in support of Conservation Law Foundation and Toxics Action Center. I want to thank those organizations for the thoughtful petition they have drafted to address this critical health issue. Massachusetts Breast Cancer Coalition joins the call for enforceable standards for PFAS in public water supplies and believes that requirements must be put in place to test all public water supplies for PFAS chemicals so there is a comprehensive understanding of the contamination issues facing the Commonwealth. Without testing and monitoring all public water supplies, Massachusetts residents may unknowingly be contaminated by their own water, and at the pace at which MassDEP is moving to protect the public health is disappointing. We know that some PFAS chemicals are carcinogenic, and therefore we all know that it is quite simply unacceptable for anyone to be exposed to these toxins. PFAS chemicals have been linked to a wide range of health effects, including immune system toxicity, elevated cholesterol, delayed mammary gland development, effects on the thyroid and liver, and cancer. Scientists are concerned that exposures to chemicals that alter mammary gland development may increase the risk of breast cancer. Pregnant women and young children deserve special consideration because early exposures matter. And the developing body is especially sensitive to PFAS exposures. MassDEP's current guidelines for public water supplies simply do not go far enough. And equally concerning is the fact that the department does not have standards for PFAS in soil, hampering remediation efforts. Consider the situation in Barnstable County as an example. According to testing of Massachusetts public water supplies required by EPA between 2013 and 2015, Hyannis had the highest level of PFAS in the state. Massachusetts Breast Cancer Coalition recently again sent a letter to Commissioner Suberg to express our concern about the remediation of groundwater contamination at the Barnstable County Fire and Rescue Training Academy and the impact of this contamination on the public water supply for Hyannis. MBCC acknowledges that MassDEP is requiring certain steps to reduce the migration of PFAS chemicals away from the Fire Training Academy towards the Hyannis public wells and further downstream. However, we are concerned that these steps don't go far enough. The continued use of the site for firefighting training and application of hundreds of thousands of gallons of water each year can flush additional PFAS chemicals into the sole source aquifer and towards public water supply wells for tens of thousands of Hyannis residents. MassDEP needs to establish standards for PFAS in drinking water and soil to ensure adequate remediation of contaminated sites like the Fire Training Academy in Hyannis. I use Hyannis as just one example of MassDEP's lack of a comprehensive approach. We do not have the luxury of time. We must treat PFAS as a class. We cannot allow another decade, another year, another month to go by without addressing these serious issues and the health risks to residents in Massachusetts. We know that MassDEP can and must do better. This expectation is the focal point of MBCC's 2019 campaign. MBCC and our supporters will be paying close attention to the progress made by MassDEP in the coming days, weeks, and months. The well-being of our children and future generations depends on your actions now. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Conservation Law Foundation and Toxic Center for their comprehensive petition on behalf of Massachusetts residents. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Susan Phelan of Green Cape.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the DEP for providing the opportunity to comment on the petition.
Is your mic on?
I think it is. Yes, no?
Susan, maybe you want to clip it to your collar. Maybe just how close you are. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm Sue Phelan, the director of Green Cape. We're based on Cape Cod. And I'd like to thank again DEP for providing this opportunity to comment on the petition from CLF and Toxics Action. In the absence of federal MCLs, and due to the ever-expanding discovery of a variety of PFASs in the Commonwealth, including my own community of Barnstable, it's incumbent upon DEP to adopt enforceable drinking water standards for PFAS as a class. Regulatory and scientific attention to PFAS is focused primarily on PFOA and PFOS, but the scope of current and future contamination is really much broader. EPA and other scientists have raised concerns that compounds from the PFAS class of chemicals are likely to pose similar health risks due to similarities in chemical structure. And certainly the AFFF foams contain possibly up to 40 different PFASs. And that is the source of contamination in my community. However, once in the drinking water, this vast assortment of PFASs are not targeted for elimination, just the two most popular flavors, PFOS and PFOA. How is that protective of public health? To truly ensure public health, PFAS should be regulated as a class. Regulating similar compounds as a class of chemicals has some earlier precedent. EPA has applied similar concepts in establishing MCLs for a group of disinfection byproducts, though it did not have sufficient information on each of the individual compounds, such is the case with the PFASs. Nevertheless, EPA promulgated a group MCL, even in the absence of complete information about each individual compound in the class, in order to protect the public health. That makes sense here as well. It also makes economic sense in that each of the 3,000 or 4,000, depending on who you talk to, 3,000 or 4,000 and growing PFAS compounds do not have to be assessed singly when they have close chemical and toxicological similarities. There are already some existing federal regulations that treat all long-chain PFASs similarly as a class, and the EPA's PFOA stewardship program includes PFOA and all precursor chemicals that can break down to PFOA. So already you have kind of the class approach. This is the DEP's meaningful opportunity to reduce exposure of Massachusetts citizens to all PFAS chemicals. I urge you to seize the moment. Continued lack of enforceable MCLs for PFAS as a class has significant public health implications for us all. A heavy burden falls on communities like Hyannis and Westfield that have already been exposed to PFAS for decades already, jeopardizing the health of the community and the livelihood of future generations as well. The heaviest burden falls on our firefighters who are continually exposed during training and during firefighting incidences, not to mention from their turnout gear, the PFAS is leaching from turnout gear, and also drinking the same water supply that the rest of us in Hyannis have been drinking. So regulating the thousands of PFASs, chemical by chemical, is not protective of public health. It's inefficient and costly and will translate, I believe, into decades more exposure for my community and others similarly burdened. In the absence of federal regulations, Massachusetts can fulfill their obligation to protect the public health of its citizens and establish an MCL, less than 1 part per trillion, for the chemicals, PFAS chemicals as a class, and they should do that without delay. Thank you.
Next, Stephen Seymour of Green Cape, and after that we will hear from William Squires and Jennifer Peterson.
Yes, I'm Stephen Seymour, and I'm also from the town of Barnstable, and I drank the water there for some 30 years in Hyannis, and unknowingly, but I've had some thyroid problems over that time period. But let's cut to the bigger picture here, and it was mentioned a little bit about there's a fire training academy in the town, and it was good to hear that there's going to be some focus on the actual places that have contaminated and cleaning up those sites, because that site has not been cleaned up. They did a hot spot, a little 10 by 10 foot spot, but not the whole site. And it has been documented by the licensed site professionals in that area that it has very highly contaminated soil. And like Cheryl Osmo says, when it rains or you practice with with foam or even water there, you're going to be pushing it into the Hyannis water system. Because the Hyannis water system is down gradient of all of that. We're a single source aquifer that we have to drink the water underneath us. That being said, I think it's very positive to have an MCL. It's my understanding is that when you have an MCL, particularly a federal one, that opens you up the possible availability of Superfund site funds to help clean it up. Because this is a national problem. It's not just a Cape Cod problem or a Westfield problem or even a Massachusetts problem. And to some degree, the EPA has not been as proactive as maybe you would like them to be on it, and provide some of those services, and also the potential for funding. You've heard from a lot of people about the funding, and it's breaking a lot of people's backs. The Hyannis water system that is impacted is an environmental justice community. And it just seems so unjust to have this going to them and them having to increase their water bills constantly in order to take care of this, when it is, it's not those people's fault. That all being said, I'm very positive about this. I'm glad the DEP is really stepping in, and the lack of the feds being really stepping in. And I hope this dialogue continues, and that a lot of action comes out of it, and help for all the communities impacted, and particularly the people that are drinking the water system. And I think I had some other things here. I think I'm just going to hand it to somebody, because as I was here, it seemed more pertinent to discuss some of those items. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Now I'm going to steal your mic.
No, let me help you. We won't let you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We'll be happy to take your